Hi everyone, I'm Shaylin with Reedsy, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about how to create an outline for your novel. So it's now October, which means it's Preptober or NaNoWriMo Prep Month. A lot of writers find outlining a very useful tool, no matter whether they're writing for NaNoWriMo or not. But I find for NaNoWriMo outlining is especially helpful. Having the outline kind of gives you the assurance that you know everything, now you just need to follow the steps you've laid out for yourself. Outlining is not one size fits all, and it does take trial and error to figure out what the best way to outline is going to be for you. So first of all, let's look at some general outlining principles to kind of figure out what the purpose of an outline is and what we want it to accomplish. Outlines provide you plot information, they help you structure your book, they help you avoid writer's block, they help you stay organized, and they also help you avoid plot holes and continuity issues. There are as many outlining methods as there are writers, so the question is, how do you find the best outlining method for yourself? First of all is try a few. Start with the one that seems the most appealing, and if it works for you, that's great. But if it doesn't, you can always switch to something else. You can switch how your outline is organized, how you build it. It's going to take some trial and error, which is totally fine. I've never outlined a book exactly the same way twice. Consider why you personally need an outline. Some writers might need an outline because without one they write very slowly because they have very bad writer's block, so having the plot set out for them beforehand helps them avoid that. Whereas another writer might need an outline to keep the information consistent in their 7 point of view mystery novel. I also like to see my outline as an interactive document. It's not something I just create before writing and then reference. It's something that I'm actively working with, actively using. I like to view my outline as a hub for my entire project. So it includes schedules, notes, pretty much everything. So before creating the full outline, personally I like to start with a kind of general structuring phase. This is basically the time to organize everything before you turn it into your finalized outline. You can kind of just structure it intuitively, or you can use a plot structure as reference. This is totally up to you. There are lots of different plot structures out there. For example, there's 27 chapter, which is an expansion of the 3-act plotline, and I'll put a graphic of what it looks like up here. There's also 15 beat. This is one I used to reference quite a lot because it's just what I was taught in school. And then another one would be the hero's journey, which we actually have a video on, so I'll leave a link to that in the cards. It's not necessary to use a plot structure to plot out your book, but if you've never structured a book before, or if you have something very plotty, then this might be more useful or more applicable. Use whatever plot structure is going to suit you or your book at this stage. Now, many writers like to use something tactile for this stage, so a corkboard or post-it notes or cue cards or even the cue card function in Scrivener. During this phase, it's pretty likely you'll notice some missing plot points or plot holes or continuity issues. That's totally normal. You might notice some pacing problems. The point of this is to figure out the order everything is going to be in, and it's very normal to get to this phase and realize you're missing something or realize something's a little wonky, and that's great. This is the easiest and best stage of the outlining and writing process to notice mistakes and also to fix mistakes. When you're putting scenes in order, think very carefully about domino effect, so think about the causality between each scene. Every time you place a scene, ask yourself, is this necessitated by the previous scene? Looking at it this way, make sure all your scenes are properly linked. Everything flows into everything else. When you've got everything in order, it's time to expand it into an actual outline. Now, of course, how you're going to structure your outline is going to depend on your personal preference, but I can talk a little bit about how I structure mine. So the method I use is to then take this list of plot points. Most of those plot points will be a single scene or a couple scenes grouped together, and then what I start doing is I just start flushing everything out. So you could use bullet points for this or paragraph form. Personally, I usually just do 1 paragraph for each scene. Different writers will go into a very different amount of detail in their outlines. Personally, I don't have a threshold or a bar of detail that I strive for. I just write down everything I know about the scene. The general information is going to be what's happening, where it's happening, and what information is conveyed. But there are other things that I might include as well, such as details on how I want the scene to be written. Usually underneath the paragraph, I then have a separate bullet where I include any quotes or dialogue that I've already written out, and then I also include the date. I didn't used to include the date in my outline, but I'm very bad at timeline, and the timeline of my books would never make sense. A lot of writers have different methods of how they organize. So personally, I break everything into chapters, and then I have an individual paragraph for every scene, and then I have the notes with the date and quotes underneath each scene. In my opinion, really the most optimal way to create an efficient outline is customization. No matter what you're using as your base process, whether that's mine or someone else's, it's customizing it based on your own needs. For example, I once heard a writer, this was at a panel talk, who they were talking about outlining, and this writer, who was a mystery writer, her outlines were extremely long because every single scene she laid out what every single character in the scene knew about the situation at that point in time, because she had to keep it consistent for motivation and information reveal about who knows what, and it was constantly changing who knew what, so she had to include that in her outline. Think about your project requirements. If you have a lot of world building or research, or your characters move around a lot and you have to keep track of a lot of locations, or you have a lot of point of views, or kind of any interesting form stuff, these are all kind of widgets or tools that you can incorporate into your outline based on what your story needs. I've never used a very complicated base process for my outline. Literally, I just write everything out and then I divide it into scenes and chapters. It's almost as simple as it could possibly be, but I just add things in based on what I need for that specific book. So that is how to create an outline. Thank you so much for watching, and remember to subscribe for new videos every Tuesday and Friday. Until next time.